Let's talk some Edgar Allan Poe because what the fuck not? I know what you people think. Oh, just another Corona video. I'm so sick and tired of this. However, this script was written a year ago before all this stay-at-home situation happened. Yeah, I'll talk about the Masque of the Red Death, this iconic Edgar Allan Poe short story, because it's one of my favorite Edgar Allan Poe stories and one of my favorite short stories in general. And maybe it's because I've read this story very, very early. I mean, I'll take you back to another era, an era where there were dial-up connections back in, I don't know, 2003. In case you're very young to remember dial-up connections, it's like the internet, only it's slow as hell. And I was in a geek IRC channel. IRC is kind of like Twitter, uh, meaning that you used hashtags and you troll people. And somebody, a friend of mine, sent me a link for this story, The Mask of the Death, and I was reading it and I was blown away by the quality of the writing and the story itself. So the first thing I did the other day, because it happened at night, all the good stuff on the internet used to happen at night back then. So I went to a bookstore and I got a very cheap version of this story. It's not this collected work of Edgar Allan Poe by Wordsworth Editions over here, which I got even cheaper because when it comes to books, I'm a huge cheapskate. So what's the story? I mean, you can find an audiobook of it on YouTube or something, but well, I know you're probably young, you want to have the hip new version of Mask of the Death, so here how it goes. We're somewhere between the medieval times and the Renaissance. It's actually the same. It's pretty much what fantasy novels today try to be. Probably we're in Italy. It's never defined exactly, but there is a guy who's a prince and he's called Prospero, so yes, probably Italy. And the timing could be wrong, more wrong than this, actually, because in this country of Prince Prospero, there is a vile disease, the Red Death. And I started to believe that this video is insensitive, so I'll just go back to the real story because I don't intend to mock real life tragedy, at least not on the internet. It's a bad idea. So, yes, Prospero is in his tower that is well stocked and well guarded, and there are a lot of other rich people there, and they're partying like there is not a care in the world. But this tower of his, it's a weird abbey. There are 7 rooms. Each one of them has different colors. So yeah, I mean, you should expect if they make a modern remake of Mask of the Death, it's going to be a slasher in some weird hipster goth club somewhere. And at midnight, this dude appears. He's tall, he's very lean, and he's covered in bloody. Let me read you the description. The figure was tall and gaunt, and shrouded from head to foot in the habiliments of the grave. The mask which concealed the visage was made so nearly to resemble the countenance of a stiffened corpse that the closest scrutiny must have had the difficulty in detecting the cheat. And yet, all this might have been endured if not approved by the mad revelers around. But the mummer has gone so far as to assume the type of the Red Death. His vesture was dabbled in blood, and his broad brow, with all the features of the face, was besprinkled with the scarlet horror. Yeah, it's an old story. It's written like that. People used to write like that. Prospero sees this gaunt figure and he gets mad. I mean, the dude is mocking him. He's reminding him of the death outside and his people who die helplessly as he's partying. So he pulls out a knife and starts handling this figure, which eludes him, and they go through a lot of room, from the blue room in the beginning to the black room in the end. And finally he catches up to this figure, this mummer, in the last room that is black with a red stained glass windows. And the moment he reaches this figure, he screams and he falls down and he dies like that. That's the whole story. I've spoiled for you. You only had I don't know, 2.5 centuries to read this. The rest of the revelers attack the figure with blood, and they grab him and they discover that his funeral cloth is empty because this visitor is Red Death itself. They were looting all this time. And this story, as with many of Edgar Allan Poe's stories, is deeply symbolic. Edgar Allan Poe used to hate being didactic. He used to hate saying how you should be and what is correct and not. I mean, the guy was a drunk and a liar. However, he creates an enduring story because of the symbolism. He loved symbolism, he loved the cryptic clues, and that's what makes the story so amazing. I mean, when I first read this story, I thought it was a political allegory. The elite are partying and the poor are dying in the street. They party in their own castle, in their own towers, and before they realize that death is coming for them. This story was published back in 1850, so it's between the French and the Russian Revolution. And Prospero is pretty much like Marie Antoinette saying, "Let them eat cake." And some months after that, she lost her head, literally. And I mean, even today, you get to the big bust of 2008, the big recession, and it's because of bankers doing all sort of stuff with loans and interests and this kind of stuff. And they were partying in their ivory towers, and then everything crumbled once their borrowing from future money caught up to them. And that's a kind of a shallow view, but I was like, what? I was 20 years old back then. I mean, if you take the text on its own, it talks about shoving your head in the sand and don't seeing what's around you. And to be honest, that's something people do, and it's the only way to do that so we don't get crazy by all these dangers around us. So what you do is you put your head in the sand and you try to ignore your problems. You build your own safe space, your own illusion, and you party in it. You feel good, but like a thief, reality will come into your safe space, your ivory tower, your abbey. The lies you've built this space on will crumble. If you go into a more literary view, a more more traditional way of using symbolism, trying to decipher the symbols in this story, we get some very interesting. I mean, we have this disease, the Red Death. And you know that the Red Death is coming because of pain, dizziness, and blood dripping out of the skin. So that's pretty much two different diseases. First one is it's septicemic plague, also known as one third of the notorious Black Death, the plague, the pestilence that decimated Europe in the 14th century. And also it's tuberculosis. And Edgar Allan Poe's wife, Vivian, was suffering from tuberculosis while he was writing the story. In any case, it's a horrible death. And if I wanted to have people freak out reading this back in the 19th century, that's something I would write, definitely. And I think that Poe, who was selling his horror stories as a way to make a living, Poe is a classic because you could make a scary story and make it as deep as I'm describing right now. That's what I can do. And if I want to have people freak out from my horror story, yes, it's definitely what I do. You contract the plague, and you bleed, and you sweat blood. And then we have the 7 rooms. We have the blue room, the purple room, the green room, the orange room, the white room, the violet room, and finally the black room. So that's pretty much birth, growth, maturity, being old in the white room, and finally we get to the twilight and death, the black one. That's pretty much obvious. Masque of the Death is also about how people are trying to escape death, and they pretend death is not there. However, the Ebon clock in the final room is ticking, and when people are reminded of that, they get angry like Prospero, and in his anger he runs after death. hoping that death will be run away. But you know what? You may hold a knife. You can hold a knife. You can try to stop death, but you'll be the one who dies. And if you spend your life hunting after death, trying to kill him, be sure you'll meet death in the end, and he'll be the one standing. Another note is that those rooms are from the east to the west, and that's the way the sun moves. So that's even more obvious. And you know what? That's why Edgar Allan Poe is a classic author, because he wrote some macabre stories, and in a way, they had all those clues, all those puzzles about human nature. I mean, in Masque of the Death, he's writing a fever dream that is turning into a nightmare. And he takes these symbols from Gothic romance, those historical fragments, thrown in there to make it more believable or deciphers from the riddle he's writing. And he just made a story that is a strong allegory about mortality and about how we often forget our problems and try to escape them, or even try to fight against the reminder of our problems. But what it does is that we don't face them. When we face them, they strike back. Let's be fair. The two things in life that are unavoidable: taxes and death. And you can be like Prospero. You can control the taxes, who gets taxed, and you not tax yourself. But no, no matter what you do about the taxes and avoiding them, you can avoid death. So I hope you like this video. Tell me your ideas about the story Mask of the Death if you read this one. I'd be happy to hear your opinions about it, and if this deep dive into the story helped you. Again, it's not about the plague that is going on right now. It's more about how universal the story is, why I like it, why I believe it should be read, and tell me if you want to have deep dives into others or stories. I'll try to do my best. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives and book stuff, and I'll see you soon.